Joseph Rosen, Anat Bernstein, and Michal Mayan. Let me go across to Joseph first. Joseph, why Northern Gaza? Why the Israeli state has decided to focus on the north and cut the Gaza Strip into two? What is the strategic objective they want to achieve?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. But I want, with your permission, to take this discussion to a broader, more strategic aspect and remind all of us that Hamas is only a proxy. And before, I agree that the only goal of Israel should be the utter destruction of Hamas. And probably the only way to do it is by entering Gaza with ground forces. But I would add that currently we have rare conditions that allow us to think of, and I would say even plan, a strategic surprise, not only against Hamas, but to the entire chain of command. And in that context, I will add also Iran. We were caught by surprise on the 7th of October, and
I think there's a bit of a problem. Anat, can you take that question? Why not Gaza? I think there's a bit of an audio problem, Joseph, but why not Gaza?
Why north? Look at the map. Look how Gaza looks. Gaza is a rectangle. To the west, you have the Mediterranean. North and east is Israeli villages, and south is Egypt. So you need to start in the place which is far from the part with the border with Egypt. That's why I guess, I'm not a defense expert, they start from the other side, which is the north, and which is the place where it's a very narrow strip. So I guess that they are starting there.
The same question to you, Michal. Why not Gaza? And how will Israel take care of so much of displacement? Reuters is reporting that 1.1, Michal, am I audible to you? 1.1 million, thank you for joining me, 1.1 million people will be displaced. How do you take care of such a huge displacement when you have given 24 hours, Hamas is not letting them leave their house, and then if they stay there, I think that's going to be a huge collateral.
So first of all, I want to thank you for having this discussion and for having us all here on your show. I want to start with the fact that this is a war, and this is a war that was brought upon my country, our country, by a murderous, brutal terrorist organization, which is Hamas. And I want to really put the focus on you mentioned that the plan is to annex the northern part of Gaza. I want to say something very clearly. We withdrew from Gaza in 2005, and we have no intention, and we did not want this war, and we did not want to go in to this horrible battles that we have in front of us. But the brutal attack that cost the lives of more than 1,300 civilians and women and children and Holocaust survivors and elderly people requests us to have a strong response. And I want to add something else. Nobody wants to harm civilians. I think our notification and our call to evacuate the area is a clear sign of that. And the responsibility for the civilian population in Gaza lies in the hands of the Hamas terrorist organization that will pay a heavy price for harming our people.
But how do you take care of the civilians when Hamas is not letting them leave their residences? The Hamas wants to use them like cannon fodder there.
Well, again, Kartikeya, war is horrible, and there hasn't been any war in the history of of mankind where civilians weren't harmed. This is not our goal, but our goal is to destroy Hamas infrastructure. And they are deliberately using civilians as human shields. It has never been more clear than during this horrible time. And again, I want to stress, this is not another escalation. It's not a military escalation. It's an all-out war. We will do whatever we can but we will also do whatever we can to destroy Hamas, and that is our main goal, while maintaining the safety of over 100 people, civilians, they have taken as hostages.
I think that's a very important point, Mikhail, you have made, that it's not a military escalation. Any person who observes foreign policy or strategic affairs would know the difference between military escalation and war. I think the way you have articulated it clears the position as to why so much of bombardment is taking place in Gaza. But just to take our other viewers, give them a sense of what Gaza is, let me play out a second set of graphics for them. Those details to understand what what Gaza represents. Gaza right now is full of underground tunnels. What you see on top of Gaza is different from what is inside Gaza, what is beneath Gaza, how Hamas uses Gaza tunnels. In fact, there is a different word for it, and you'll be surprised to know when I'm talking about the underground Gaza tunnels, there's a word which they use, Gaza Metro. They use the word Gaza Metro. And the word is that the whole underground movement of people in Gaza is through these tunnels. Let's play the other part of this graphic. The tunnels are called underground metro, as I was saying. So let's move forward. When we say underground metro, that's how they move. But the army will have to face booby traps and snipers. When I use the word booby traps and snipers, I'm talking about the urban warfare that was witnessed in Aleppo, the urban warfare that was witnessed in Syria, the Al-Hamas. You know, the Hamas has Russian anti-tank Kornet missiles. That's another dimension. So imagine you're using these anti-tank missiles on infantry, because ground operations are about infantry. And Israel will suffer ground casualties, because if there is a war, there is a ground casualty. Let me play the third set of graphics, just to give an understanding of what Gaza is. Gaza is a 25-mile long enclave. It's a big enclave, number of cities are there. There's a North Gaza, there's South Gaza, the South Gaza, the airport has been bombed. Let's play the other part. It's enclosed by the sea, Israel and Egypt, as one of our panelists said. It's densely populated, 2.1 million residents. That is more than 20 lakh, 22 lakh. And it's a different, it's a different geographical mix of people. There are very young people in Gaza. Gaza has high poverty level. Let's play other part. The majority population is under the age of 14 in Gaza. Under the age of 14. 81% of people are below poverty line, which means that there is no economic activity that is taking place. It also means that they are dependent on Israel. There's a massive water and electricity crisis because that has been stopped. As the guest said, it's not a military escalation, it's war. And the rules changes when it's war. And Israel also runs a naval and an air blockade on Gaza. So Gaza is not a usual territory. It's a different ball game altogether. And Wadi Gaza Reserve is the only coastal wetland in Gaza. Let me play out a bite in which one of the officers is explaining the war is being fought. So you get an idea how complex the situation is. And Wadi Gaza is crucial for agriculture. Let's play the bite.
Security fence, do not approach the border, only go south. Again, out of a concern for safety of non-combatants. I'll continue to read. Hamas terrorists are hiding in Gaza City, inside tunnels, underneath houses, and inside buildings populated with innocent Gazan civilians. Civilians of Gaza City, evacuate south for your own safety and the safety of your families, and distance yourself from Hamas terrorists who are using you as human shields. And the last paragraph, in the following days, the IDF will continue to operate with significant force in Gaza City and will make extensive efforts to, to avoid harming civilians. That's the message that we issued a few hours ago to Gazan civilians, and the aim here is to minimize the damage to civilians. There are significant combat operations ongoing, and we are preparing for future and the continuance of our combat operations, and out of an understanding that there are civilians here whom are not our enemy and we do not want to target them, we are asking them to evacuate so that we will be able to continue to strike military targets belonging to Hamas in the Gaza Strip. That is the purpose, And I think that's an important update, relevant for you to be aware of. This is a first notice that we gave. We understand that this will take time. It's not an easy process, but we have issued this guidance, and the aim of the evacuation is simply to save lives. As you may have read in the media, this was communicated to UN authorities, first and foremost to UN authorities, and the IDF is in communications and liaison with UN authorities, transferring information to them and also listening to what the UN informs Israel about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. And as I've said many times during the last 7 days, the IDF remains fully committed to the law of international conflict. We will carry ourselves accordingly, in sharp contrast to the enemies around us and to Hamas, which is in total disregard of anything related to values, norms, and definitely not the laws of armed conflict.
So it's very, very clear that the target is going to be the Gaza city, and the visuals you see behind me will show you the intensity of the aerial bombardment which is taking place in Gaza. As one of the guests very clearly pointed it out, I think that's a big takeaway. It's not a military escalation, it's war out there. That's how Israel is defining it, it's war. So in war there are casualties. So I think the rules and the norms have changed. And this is the intensity of bombardment, the softening which is taking place. Aditya, coming to you, I think one thing is very clear when the IDF spokesperson is speaking and when he's clearly stated that we are asking people to leave the Gaza city and that this is the sort of the bombardment which is taking place. I think, Aditya, it's going to be literally a hand-to-hand combat in Gaza city.
Absolutely. I have no doubts in my mind that it's going to be hand-to-hand combat. That's why 360,000 troops and reserves have been brought in. In fact, we heard Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, the international spokesperson, clearly indicate what's the plan of action is, and that's why they have given 24 hours for people in North Gaza to evacuate. In fact, I've just received another statement from the Israeli Defense Forces which says the current accusation made against the IDF regarding the use of white phosphorus in Gaza is unequivocally false. The IDF has not deployed the use of such munitions, and this is a propaganda by Hamas. We've seen a few videos and photographs unconfirmed.
Can you just explain the viewers what white ammunition is? What is a phosphorus bomb?
Well, there is a lot of propaganda that has happened during the Iraq war, particularly in Syria, about the use of chemical weapons, about the use of white phosphorus that actually cripples the civilian population out there. There have been claims that it has been widely used in Syria.
I think, just to tell our viewers, when we talk about phosphorus weapon, as Aditya was saying, basically it's a weapon which can burn through your skin. So it is not banned, but in its deployment, there are rules which are in existence, There are international norms. You're not supposed to use that in civilian areas. You can use it where military is. So it's a very potent weapon. The phosphorus bombs were used in Vietnam, and one of the kind of the phosphorus weapon which everyone remembers is the famous photograph of 1970s of a girl running away, and at the back when the napalm exploded. So it just burns through your skin. So this is the sort of bombing which is taking place in Gaza. This is the action which is taking place in Gaza, and I think the time is running out for Hamas. Coming back to you, Joseph, my question is Israel looking for a close combat like Aleppo and Mosul in Gaza? Is that we are going to witness? Something which the American Special Forces did, when they went against ISIS?
Well, in fact, we are fighting against ISIS because Hamas is ISIS, if not worse. We are ready to fight with all we have to achieve the goal of the utter destruction of Hamas. Regarding the phosphorus bombs, I also seen the video that Hamas published. Actually, it was a video taken during the war in Ukraine, a bomb used by Russia. And I would like to add another point, following what Michal said. The fact that we called civilians in Gaza to evacuate and Hamas calling them to stay at their homes is again a proof for their war crimes, Hamas war crimes, actually a double war crime because they not only target civilians, but they also use civilians as human shields. So I would add that Hamas is not only responsible for the safety and security of the Israeli hostages they kidnapped, but also responsible for the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Anat, United Nations is asking for more time. Do you think that the state of Israel will ask or will give United Nations more time to shift its entire machinery out of there, because United Nations is saying that it's really impossible for them to do it in 24 hours. That's also a first.
I'll tell you what I would answer. Release the kids, release the elderly, and then we can talk about extension. But we have over 150 hostages, 6 months baby, 9 months baby, a dimension, a lady, 85. So if you want to have some leeway, release the hostages, especially the kids and the elderly. That's one. And when you're talking about ultimatum, let me remind you that Hamas knows that we will go into a ground operation from, not just from Saturday when they started, but when they started to plan this attack. So it's not 24 hours. Let's be clear about it. It's at least 1 year that they know that this day will come. And they, if they really want to protect their country and people, they had enough time. As they plan to attack us, they could plan to take care of their people, but that's not their interest. They're not their priority. They don't care about their people.